NBC interrupts its regular program schedule to bring you the following special report.
Martin Luther King Jr. was killed tonight in Memphis, Tennessee, shot in the face as he stood alone on the balcony of his hotel room. He died in a hospital an hour later.
Dr. King's death sent shockwaves around the world. But for many in America's black communities, tears gave way to rage. Rage that spilled into the streets of cities like D.C. and 99 other cities across the country. Rage that turned grief into riots. Rage that turned into looting, fires, and unrest that destroyed communities. It was a reckoning and judgment against the nation's decades of Jim Crow policies.
In the 1960s, the United States was confronting social, economic, and political discrimination on all levels. In cities like Los Angeles, Chicago, Detroit, Newark, Philadelphia, Harlem in New York, there had been sustained unrest against, in particular, economic and housing and educational issues. So the dissatisfaction with the nation, which was growing over the centuries of African Americans being in the United States, was coming to a head in this period.
Well, the assassination of figures in the 1960s was cataclysmic, and Martin Luther King, I think, was the last of them. You had a president of the United States assassinated. Not sure why the 60s were so violent, but what is most memorable about Martin Luther King is certainly not his assassination. What is most memorable is how he woke up the civil rights movement. And for me, that was memorable because I was a young civil rights worker at the time. I was in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And we were most impatient to make sure that what was then wholesale segregation in the United States, in employment and housing and voting, got erased.
Washington, D.C. burned for 4 days as the Army and National Guard stood watch. White-owned businesses were ruined, while the rooters spared black-owned businesses.
In a social and political context, it is very clear that these spontaneous uprisings, in fact, were directed at businesses that had been less than fair to many individuals. It was spontaneous, and the rebellion couldn't be predicted, and it wasn't predicted. But what was predicted is the fact that people were very dissatisfied with the way they had been treated on many levels. And it was the businesses closest to them that unfortunately bore the brunt of their dissatisfaction.
A lot of businesses got burned out, let's face it. You know, up and down 14th Street and Georgia Avenue, 7th Street, you know, a lot of businesses got burned out, and that was unfortunate. So, and I think they just got caught up because it seemed to me, from my perspective, it looked like that the businesses that were targeted were basically white-owned businesses, okay? And so, but there were some other businesses like black-owned businesses got caught up in it. Unfortunately though, U Street didn't get hit hard. You know what I mean? I don't really remember anybody on U Street getting burned out. You know what I mean? So it was just one of those things, you know.
I suppose it says much about Martin Luther King's life that after he was assassinated, what happened in the immediate aftermath was something he would have detested. And that was, of course, the riots that took hold, not downtown, but in the midst of the community that had been serving our city. We're sitting in the rebuilt U Street. It had to be rebuilt because we tore it down. The African American young people tore it down, and U Street burned. But of course, U Street symbolized African American communities throughout the United States that burned and rioted during that period.
Block after block of the capital city bore the scars of a war that was fought hard but changed little. But there were routines that made a difference and held the promise that things would get better. And one of those routines was the Teenarama dance party. Teenarama Dance Party, a teen television dance program, was created for black teens during a time of racial segregation and social injustice in the nation's capital. Prior to that time, black teenagers were only allowed to dance on the all-white Milt Grant show 1 day a week. On Tuesdays, the black community called it Black Tuesday.
I danced on the Milt Grant show in the late 50s. We danced on Tuesdays, and we did it about every other week, I think. I don't think we did it every week. They wouldn't let the black kids and the white kids dance together because we were still in that segregation mood. Although, if you won a dance contest, you could come back on Saturdays and dance against all the couples that won the contest for that week. You could come back on Saturdays and you would dance against them then. And by the way, I never won a dance contest on Saturdays. I'd only win if I was dancing on Tuesday with my people.
It was because they had another dance show, and that show was called Milt Grant, the Milt Grant Show. And the Milt Grant Show only had blacks on it once a week. And it was on Channel 5 TV. I remember that. It wasn't such thing as called the Fox Channel or anything like that. So it was important that we got together. And the Teenarama show was on an off channel. It was on Channel 14. And you were lucky if you even could get it on your TV. And it was in black and white. Of course, most TV shows were in black and white too. And just the style of their dressing and everything, it was sort of educated, but people really didn't know it was an education for black people. An opportunity. It was an opportunity. It was important too because it was an opportunity for black young teenagers to get together and have good fun.
Teenarama filled a void for black teens. Teenarama gave them an opportunity to appear on television and show off their own dancing and have a good time.
The Teenarama dance show showed such a positive image. You know, the media used to always want to portray us as thugs or poor or drug addicts, and the Teenarama dance show had standards. You know, the guys had to wear jackets and ties, the young ladies had to wear dresses, we had to have our hair looking nice, and we looked like kids who were college bound. You know, we looked like kids who were going to be something in life. You know, we just didn't look like what the media was always trying to portray us as. As a matter of fact, I had teachers that used to say, "Ooh, Joan, I love to see you dancing on there," because I call everybody I know and say, "Ooh, that little short one, the one that just went behind that guy, she has this on, she's in my class." You know, it was not only was it a source of pride for us that were on there, but the community loved it.
Teenarama was an important part of our community at the time. I'm proud to say it came and went with a good reputation as being a good showcase for our young people, and it will be remembered as something very positive in our community for those 2 or 3 years. I'm proud of that and always will be.
For youngsters growing up in D.C., in what for them was a black city, but never seeing themselves portrayed in the media. Teenarama was one of the very few examples of where you could see yourself or see people who looked like yourself.
The show was broadcast live 6 days a week from the studios of WOOK-TV in Northeast D.C. from 1963 until 1970. Despite what was taking place in Washington, D.C. in the aftermath of Dr. King's assassination, the Teenarama Dance Party remained on the air. Teenarama would have been important anyway, but it was significantly important because of the times, because of all the turmoil that was going on in 1968. What it did, it showed the nation young black people that had honor, that had respect for one another, that were well dressed, that were well mannered, that were soulful, and they could have fun. It showed white America that we were regular people just like them. And it showed black America we have our own. And to me, that's very important, because when I was a young kid growing up, I'd run home and watch Dick Clark on American Bandstand. But there were no faces of color. You know, it was all white. We watched anyway because it was the only thing to watch. But now to have our own, dancing to our own music, you know, it was great.
It was very difficult, but we did our best to try to get there by 2 to 3 buses, walk across a big field, and to get there. I think we were on like Tacoma Park bus, Tacoma Park Station bus, and I can't remember the other street, but it was a journey, trying to walk across that big field and then stand in line in order to get in. But most of the time with the regulars, we had already had our line on the other side to get in. We were escorted in first, and then the other ones that had tickets, they had to wait in line and then proceed in. But they had to make sure they were dressed neatly.
Many of the teens traveling to the WOOK studios witnessed the protests, the looting and policing by the military with bayonet rifles and all the other going-ons of a full-blown riot. However, these young people were determined to express themselves through their social dancing.
The National Guard was stationed at our high school, right inside the stadium part of the high school.
My Teenarama career started way before the riots. Like I was started when I was like 15, 16, because I could dance in junior high school. Anyway, but during the riots, Bob was no longer there. We had Leon the Lover, and he was good, but he wasn't Bob King. You know, we didn't do the mile-long sandwich. We didn't do, I mean, just the atmosphere felt different, because at home, when you could go on Teenarama during the riots, it was pretty much cleaned up, but you still smell the smoke, and the smoke was in the air, and tear gas, you could smell it.
During this time of unrest, many parents were apprehensive to let their teenagers travel to the studio after school.
My father kept us at home and inside. We couldn't do any riding on the bus or going nowhere. You know, it was pretty dangerous, because they had also a curfew for everybody, for the city.
First of all, I was shocked. And when they started riding, I thought that was terrible, because we were tearing up our neighborhoods opposed to tearing up neighborhoods where the white people lived, okay? We were tearing up the stores that we had to go to get on a bus. You know, you couldn't get on a bus. It was just really, it was frightening for me. It was frightening for me. I went to Dunbar Senior High School, and that was my last year of Dunbar. And so I was allowed, I walked from Dunbar Senior High School to the government printing office to get with my father. And we walked from the government printing office all the way to C Pleasant, Maryland, which is like Eastern Avenue, I believe. That's what it is? Okay. And then we had to go there, and from there, we literally had to hitchhike home because the buses weren't running.
Well, your parents all stressed out because you had National Guard rolling up and down the street. You're in the curfew. You couldn't go on Teenarama until the curfew was lifted because, you know, National Guard think you were going somewhere and loot because you was a kid. But my parents was all stressed out. My aunts and them say, boy, don't go nowhere, just hang out with your friends. And you going down on Mount View Place, and y'all got a little party down there, go down there and dance. And, you know, do your thing, because you can't go on Teenarama right now because, you know, things ain't right.
The television station executive producers did their best to protect the teens by providing information on traveling to and from the studio.
I think Bob and others did, to make Teenarama the showcase of the best of our young people. And I do think we succeeded. As I said, we insisted upon a dress code of sorts. We insisted upon the way you danced and how you behaved and so on. Our biggest problem with Teenarama and the outside community was the gangs of young thugs that accosted the kids on their way to and from Teenarama.
Having gone through riots, turmoil, and times of uncertainty, Teenarama was a safe haven. It was a place of refuge. Here's our own. We can come to it every day at this time, and we can enjoy ourselves. We can relax, and we can celebrate being us. After the rioting and unrest subsided, Washington, D.C. would never be the same. And in spite of Dr. King's assassination, his work continued, and change did come, little by little.
Improved housing, upgraded community services, even some improved educational activities did evolve, even if they weren't sustained. People's lives on many levels did improve because of this rioting, because of this social unrest.
U Street is frequented by people of every race today. We still regard it as the heart of the African American community. But until integration became commonplace, the U Street was all we had, and yet it was U Street that burned. And when it burned, it lasted for a generation of its effect on African American business.
It's a whole different ball game. You know, when you look at U Street now, like I say, up and down U Street used to be all black-owned businesses. You may have one or two others, but mostly black-owned. And so to see it now, with the gentrification that's going on and all the other cultures that are up here now, it's a big difference.
The Teenarama Dance Party remained on the air until its final show on Friday, November 20th, 1970. And although there were changes in the production, black teenagers in Washington, D.C. continued to find enjoyment dancing on the Teenarama Dance Party. When you're making history, you don't really know you're making history. But it was also a part of history because I think I must have been only 19, somewhere in there. So at 19 years old, I was one of the youngest people hosting a major television show in the country. So it was a great day when I became the host of Teenarama.
Teenarama really was the pioneer of all the other dance shows. This is before Soul Train, before all these other shows that they brought up.
I'm a native Washingtonian, and I went to Dunbar Senior High School in 1968 during the riots. I used to dance every now and then, not every week. on Teenarama. I had a friend who got me on there, and I just went a couple of times because my parents didn't allow me to go out like to dances and things like that. So that was like a plus. That was like a privilege for me to go.
It was important for Teenarama to stay on the air because it was like our legacy. And seeing the family and friends out in the audience, like TV Land, watching us, dance on the show, it was just marvelous. I really enjoyed it, and I didn't want to stop. I wanted to continue on, but everything has to come to an end. So that was one of my most memorable times, just to be on there and keep dancing and continue.
Today, the year 1968 resonates in the minds of people as a year that changed the nation. Communities in D.C. are now rebounding from the turmoil caused by the riots, and the Teenarama dance party remains in the memories of those who continued dancing through the flames.